Hello everyone, I'm Mod Acorn. I'm your host for today. This is our second live stream from home, so bear with us. There might be a few technical difficulties, but we'll be fine. We'll get there. With me, we've got Mod Ash, Mod Husky,
Yeah.
Mod Flippy.
Hey guys.
So let's kick this off so that we can dive straight into it. First, we've got a few announcements. At the beginning of the week, we published a statement and talked about how COVID-19 and the current world situation affects Jagex and Old School. There have been some developments, and we'll update you as soon as we know more information, but you could use the _COVID for more information. We also have published a few weeks ago the March Gazette, hoping to publish April's Gazette soon, as it is now the 1st of April. This talked about some of our projects, including clans and group Ironman, as well as discussing our roadmap and a prototype, which was Soul Wars. You can use the !Gazette for more information on that. And finally, we released a Bounty Hunter blog on Monday. This gave our plans and our ideas on how we would like to return Bounty Hunter into the game. It included some potential rewards, and we have updated those since this morning. So I'd recommend you looking through that blog as soon as you can. You can view the blog using the !BH command. Cool, that's the announcements. Let's dive in, let's do this. First off, how is everyone that's here? How is life settling in, working from home? Who wants to go first?
I think it's pretty nice. I'm kind of enjoying it, to be honest. I miss seeing people in person, and I miss being able to just turn over and being able to have a chat with someone or go for a coffee. But I also do like being at home. I play Old School. It's I think many of us are kind of born to be at home.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of difficulties that you don't realize though working at home. I've noticed that I used to get in quite early ahead of the traffic, and I've had a tendency to not have the urgency to get up in the morning, but then I end up working later because of it. And I also don't stop maybe when I should stop because the cutoff is less clear. Sometimes I'll leave before my normal time that I've scheduled to do because I'll get ahead of traffic or something like that. Or I'll leave because I need to get supper on before my girlfriend gets home and stuff like that. But there's just, it's that gray area is gone.
Whoa, Husky, first off, you got engaged. She's no longer your girlfriend.
Sorry.
You gotta keep
right.
Sorry, fiance.
She's gonna kill you when she watches this.
She doesn't care about RuneScape, so it's fine.
How's life working at home for you, Ash?
I don't like it. On the other hand, there's a lot worse ways to spend the pandemic than in a pretty comfy house with mostly decent internet and a job I can actually do from here, and it's definitely safe. So can't complain. I do miss kind of having the people around in the office though, and also, all the way back to 2013 when I kind of broke up with somebody, but she was still living in my house for a few months. The office was kind of where I went to not be at home, especially then, in fact. So that's kind of broken down a bit now that the office is my home. And on the plus side, now I work in a kitchen, I can get snacks.
That is a bonus. There's one thing that I definitely miss from the office is just those constant, let's go to the kitchen and get a drink, or let's chat. And now it's let's pull up a Zoom call and try to quickly get that sorted. It's quite challenging.
Yeah, the stand-ups are also super awkward because we need to do each person in alphabetical order to keep track of who's going to go next. Normally we just stand in a ring and we say what we're going to do for the day and what we did yesterday, but when you're on Zoom, everyone's just kind of who's next, and then everyone sits quietly. But we figured out we do it in alphabetical order and it works.
But we still forget how to count and how to say the alphabet. So it's always is it me now?
Basically.
Okay, cool.
There was
So
one
that,
kind of effect last Thursday in the update that where it made quite a difference. Like, for only the third time ever, we turned off the whole of Old School RuneScape while the engine team fixed the thing that had gone wrong with the game update. Now, on the previous occasions where we've done that, we've then had various managers in various points in a fairly large building, not all in communication with each other. Hence, you end up with some staff saying, no, we won't do a rollback, and others saying, no, we will do a rollback, and getting a decision made when people weren't in the same place didn't go so easily, even though they're all in one great big building together. Whereas since, for all our game updates, we've got a call running on a voice channel with all the stakeholders present in it, and when I thought things were going sideways last Thursday, I was able to get our producers in there like within half a minute, so they could make a decision together. So arguably, being in different buildings, in fact, 3 different countries, given where our producers are stuck, I think it might even have been helping slightly.
I do think that was
Anyway,
probably
have
one of
stuff
the
like that.
smoothest reboots we've ever done before, in terms
Well,
of
the fact
having
that
to
we
shut it
didn't
down.
have to shut down, with the fact that we didn't have to re-roll everyone's accounts back, made a huge difference, because that is, however well coordinated it is, it's like 3 hours of file copying at the very minimum. This, they just needed to prepare a version of the engine with the code undone slightly, and that was, a mere hour and a half. Obviously a long time to be without your RuneScape, but we've had worse, a lot worse.
We often see players, after we have to shut down the servers for a long period of time, saying or suggesting that we move to bi-weekly updates, or bi-monthly updates, sorry, rather than going towards every week. Do you feel like that's something that would have helped in this situation?
It would have happened whenever it happened, I think. The thing in question was not going to be caught by an extra week of testing unless they stumbled on the exact kind of things that would trigger it. And for that, I think it would have needed a lot more players to be engaging in it. So I don't think an extra week of testing would have caught that one, to be honest. Now, of course, if we're only updating, every 2 weeks, then there's only a chance of this happening every 2 weeks. So instead of there being 3 of those in the 7 years of Old School's history, there could be 3 in 14 years, maybe, if that's how the rate works out. On the other hand, frankly, when we've got a bug fix ready, I'm generally keen to ship it to the players sooner rather than later, even if it means that the updates are quite small. And especially when we've had a poll like 70, where there's quite a lot of bits of it that players would like, sitting on them and saying, yeah, but we don't do updates that frequently, doesn't feel like it'll benefit a whole lot of people.
That makes sense. Do you have anything to add, Husky or Flippy? No.
Yeah, I don't know about the rollback situation. I think I personally think that being able to work in sprints and bi-monthly updates would go quite well, but it would obviously, as Ash said, mean that the players would get up smaller updates a lot less often. I don't think there's a correct answer.
Yeah. All right, let's go to our first topic. So on Monday, we released a Bounty Hunter blog. This featured our ideas on returning Bounty Hunters at Old School, but it also featured some rewards, new ones that we've not once introduced before into Old School, things that are very niche per se. Ash, what are your thoughts on the current Bounty Hunter blog reception? And is there anything you could change or add to it if you wanted to?
So many players are naturally disappointed that we haven't tried to recreate, say, how things were in 2008, 2010, one of those eras. And to a great extent, that's because of the vision we put out in the Gazette not that long previously. The idea that the wilderness would probably work better if we stopped taking players out of it to do PvP elsewhere. While the matter of PvP worlds is still quite a contentious one, Bounty Hunter, at the very least, has been in the wilderness for, rather a long time. and we don't think that it would be the best move to take all those players out of it and put them in a new bit of terrain somewhere else locked away, even if that terrain were accessed from inside the wilderness. Now, regarding creators, one of the things about them is that they created a sort of hub in the wilderness. You could go there where there was a safe spot and a bank, and if I recall correctly, teleports. Now, that's not something this Bounty Hunter iteration is offering, but since it's only a couple of weeks ago that the Gazette offered to do pretty much that with moving clan wars up there, then I'd expect that since that was quite well received, we'll probably go ahead with it. At which point, that would create you a safe hub in the wilderness with a bank in it, and we're amenable to making it, well, doing whatever makes sense for players with the wilderness levels around that bit of terrain, which could be nothing like it was originally, or it could be create an expanse with one set level range, so that people can fight in a fairly consistent manner around it. We're flexible either way. In terms of the other rewards, no, it's not a big wealth generator, and the blog says why. And I'm afraid we're not likely to be able to offer one that is, given what happened when we did, even with additional restrictions to stop people getting into it on, mass created accounts. That's still really asking for trouble, and is the kind of thing that would lead to us having to remove the thing permanently. So, yeah, these are intended as little things to help reduce the cost of you fighting. But if you go back to like the really old era of RuneScape, the wilderness didn't generate wealth at all when people fought each other. People just did it because they liked it. That's not going to compete in terms of wealth generation with the rest of RuneScape, of course, if it doesn't try to do it at all. But by giving you some food items and some stuff to reduce the cost of your spells, I'd hope that we can at least give you a little something for what you've done, without it ending up having to be removed again. And also, we are open to more restricted things, like building on the idea of the cursed shark. A lot of the feedback was, this is stupid, make it bigger. Fine, we'll make it bigger. We started quite conservative with that one, rather than produce something massively controversial. But if the feedback is mostly, we want a bigger one of those, you can have a bigger one of those. Cursed manta ray, cursed anglerfish. Didn't try dark crab because they already come from the wilderness, but good enough. And building on that, along with the spell sacks, so that you don't have to use real runes to cast spells in that area, we thought, how about Vesta's longsword? And if that works out, maybe perhaps a few more from that catalogue as well.
It'd be quite nice to kind of see how the VLS works within this concept, and then maybe introducing the other weapons in other PvP content, such as maybe adding one to LMS reward shop, or in the future any other content that we do. So just like you wouldn't see one single PVM boss have every single best in slot item, you could disperse them evenly across. It would be the same with, hopefully, if this works within Bounty Hunter.
Could be. Flippy, Husky, I mean, you guys have seen all the drafts of the blog as they came out. Was there anything that you really wanted to see in there that we haven't covered?
I'm honestly pretty happy with the results so far. I think it's a nice and expandable concept, and we've had so many internal discussions in the office of how to go around the whole generating wealth problem, and it always comes down to the same thing. So I think this is a nice solution to prevent that from happening.
Yeah, I agree. I think that obviously players would love for it to be as much money as other pieces of content. It's probably one of the bigger pieces of feedback that we got, that we just can't really find a solution without having the matching systems that we would like the ELO systems. I think it talked about in the blog that we just don't have the tech to put in properly right now. Obviously, if you're matching really high elo people with other really high elo people, and only those people get wealth, then it's fantastic. But when someone can lay down and die repeatedly for an hour and then you do the same to them, it's hard to get that system right. So yeah, I think there's things we'd like to do in the future, and hopefully with that wilderness the PvP sort of roadmap that was published, we'll have a lot more of those things that players have been wanting as the time goes on.
When we look at our bounty hunter proposal, we did state that players will be auto-skulled. If this is something that does prove successful, would we look into moving that to all worlds that instantly skull the player when they enter the wilderness?
That one takes out certain builds and is therefore, while some people think it's going to be a great idea, others are very strongly opposed to it. So I think it's a little early to confirm we're definitely going to be able to do it for Bounty Hunter, let alone every other world in all PvP areas.
Yeah.
The problem
but
is
it's the kind of thing that can go back and forth. Husky.
You do have a lot of people who just want to PvP for fun, right? They want to have minimal risk. They want to have their powerful special attack weapon, and it is just fun for them. They're not in it for generating money, right? You've got the other people who obviously want to generate a lot of golden hours. So I think having an auto skull will just completely remove that aspect that people will enjoy, that sort of safer PvP, if you know what I will. So as long as you keep protect item on, you're not going to lose a lot. So I don't think I'd want to move it to everything, although I think having the option there for high risk is a good idea.
Yeah.
We do have high risk worlds, and they're not very significant at the moment because all they do is disable that prayer. They could do something a bit more significant.
Do you have anything in mind?
Well, roughly the skull thing you were discussing could be what they do.
Makes sense. One player has asked if we could revisit adding imbues to the bounty hunter reward shop in addition to having them at Nightmare Zone.
Yes.
I can see.
I don't know. I've just never really liked Nightmare Zone anyway. I was never against the idea of tradable imbues, so it could come from a PvP activity, but you wouldn't have to engage in it to get it, which would perhaps be okay. It could just, again, if you're just adding it as an extra, that's all right as well. I kind of want to remove them from Nightmare Zone. I think all of us kind of want to slowly remove most of the rewards from that shop anyway.
Slowly just see it die. I mean, you could do what other players have suggested and move Nightmare Zone to Lunar Isle. I mean, that's another suggestion. Or we just get rid of it and put everything elsewhere. I mean, who knows? So
there'd certainly be a lot of people who don't have defense requirements to go to Lunar Isle who'd have an interesting time after that.
Yeah, it's come up quite a lot because of the lore or the thematics around having it in Lunar. However, as you said, it does significantly limit the amount of people that could use it.
A lot of people in chat who clearly likes AFKing. It's like, no,
no, don't touch it. We hear you loud and clear. So,
or do we?
Well, we can see them loud and clear.
The thing is, if people just want an AFK... On you go, sorry?
You go.
I'm sorry, if people want an AFK way to train combats, that's fine. I just don't think you should be able to profit or like get money from it and things like that. That's the weird part to me.
What I was going to say is that nobody set out to create a bounty hunter update that would kill Nightmare Zone. And since the original question was how about putting the imbues in there as well, I think it might be a lot more likely to actually happen if we stick to that rather than trying to fold in a Lunar Isle rearrangement of the minigame.
Yeah.
Exactly. So we have a lot of players that have going on this PvP discussion that because there's a lot more people playing the game and due to either being in this unfortunate situation or they love the game, we heavily are seeing requests for Deadman mode. Is that something that you would like to see in the future?
We've answered it before that we think that the way Deadman was previously, it needed changes made to it and time to make it good. None of us have openly been opposed to having Deadman mode in the game, and I think there's definitely a lot of players that would like it. So yeah.
I didn't like having 4 of them a year, given that it was going season tournament, with very little time between them, and a constant complaint that we weren't getting any dev time to actually try acting on the things players asked us to do. Now, not all of those would be feasible, by the way, but it would be nice to be able to do more than we didn't do. So, Dead Man less often doesn't have to be Dead Man never. So I'd be glad to see it back in some form.
Yeah, that would be a real nice solution, because that also kind of gives us time to really properly think about what we're implementing and not just pushing out another season for the sake of it, because we need to, stick to the very, very tight schedule.
One of my favorite things watching it last time was the Shiloh Village lockdown. There's so many strategies that come out of it, and you have people messaging you saying like, this isn't fair, I can't get access to this quest, I can't finish it. And then some people are saying, well, that's part of the strategy, come and fight me if you want access to it. It's just that constant, like, people just like engaging with it was just something that was really fun. I would love to see it back again in the future for sure.
I would also like to see a Dead Man with relics. That would be sick.
As the person
that
who
would be
designed relics, I'd imagine you and Husky designed them. I'm sure you would love to see them in there.
It does beg the question, right? Is there a distinction between Dead Man mode and a PvP league, right? Because those could be entirely different things.
Yeah.
With Dead Man mode being the same sort of idea to build your account to compete in a 1v1, whereas leagues is kind of separated that from that, where the goal isn't necessarily to build the best PKing account or best PVM account or whatever, it's to get the most points possible. So it depends. They could be entirely separate things.
It could completely change the meta. I mean, unlocking something that gives you 1 tick faster using weapons is something. Imagine, though, I mean, it could change the entirety of how PvP works if you had a relic like that in a league.
I think leagues are also a very safe sort of experimental ground for us. I think one of the things people noticed was the harmonized staff being a 1 tick faster magic weapon directly sort of came from like inspiration what we were developing from leagues at the time. You know, the reason we made that relic is because having a 4 tick cycle magic weapon for Ulm turns out it's pretty important if you want to keep actually any sort of sustainable DPS up. So that was why that existed. And then obviously saying, well, people don't use the normal spell book, what would make them do it? Well, having that weapon in the game, you know, so it could absolutely go both ways. Where this is an idea we have for relics for PvP, it could be absolutely broken and bonkers, and that's fine because it's in a league. And if it's just a really good idea, it could see its way into the game, you know?
Yep.
I think it's really hard to find someone on the old school team that would say no to Dead Man mode. I think we all have all at least said at least one time that we would love to see something like that given the chance to. So
Yep.
Who knows what the future could hold. So we have a big expansion coming up soon-ish, hopefully. I mean, we've polled it. So we have Darkmeyer and the Hallowed Sepulchre. I know that you, Husky, and Flippy have been working a lot. How is it coming along? How is that going for you?
It's going pretty well, I feel like. The Sepulchre is really coming together now, which is nice to see. It's like we're starting to actually be able to, try the full environment out, because previously we've been kind of creating these test squares as we showed off on live stream previously. And sure, that's fun and all, and seeing stuff actually working. But when you really start putting things together and now seeing graphics coming in from Ryan and Mode West, it's like you get a much more fuller picture of the end result, and it's really satisfying.
Yeah. Look out for the April Gazette. I wrote a lot. I don't know what word limits are and whether they're going to cut back stuff, but there's essentially a lot of insight as to going into deving the Sepulchre and where it's at. And we're basically at the stage where I think all but one floor is, I say done, but it's done without going through proper balancing, right? The concepts have been mapped down, and the layouts that I designed from paper, or paper, we don't design with paper anymore, but you know what I mean? On design pages, they're all done. It's a case of just fine-tuning it all. But it is just the best thing ever to see essentially your work come to life. Because when it comes to these sort of traps, they obviously have tells, which means the player has to react to them. And quite often with the placeholder animations that us developers use, things just don't line up correctly. And if I spent time looking for a perfect animation, it wouldn't be worth it, because we're just going to replace it anyway. So some of the traps have started getting these tells and getting the real feel for what they're going to look like to the player. And that's been really exciting.
So you're telling me that we will not have a trap that just projects bots at you as you're trying to... No.
No, we're gonna have to remove the bot trap, guys. Unfortunately, seeing human projectiles being launched is probably not the best vision of that trap.
Maybe we should pull removing the bots.
Maybe
you know that would fail.
Maybe we could redecorate them for Christmas, though, like we've done with a few other graphics in the game. Hasn't always gone right first try, but if it was throwing, baubles or little Christmas trees down the aisle, that's surprisingly appealing.
Well, technically, the projectiles are NPCs, so we could make them be whatever downscaled NPC we wanted.
Technically, it's a bug that the Motherlode mine. Oh yeah, sorry. Technically, it's a bug that the Motherlode mine uses the got rockfalls with Santa hats on. It's because when we made the Motherlode mine, we didn't actually have a lot of artists in the team. In fact, I don't think we had any artists in the team because Alfie hadn't joined yet, nor Ghost. So we had to make do with what we got, which was a repainted pet rock, which meant that it inherited the Santa hat that was put on the real pet rock, and it's used in a lot of places too. Changing a model like that isn't that hard, especially if it's used in a lot of places. So maybe for Christmas we can have some fun with it.
I think we should, 100%. When it comes to the Hallowed Sepulchre, what was one of the most challenging things that you had to overcome when it comes to developing it?
I think collision in our game is just next to non-existent. When you've got a projectile that's theoretically teleporting towards you, so it's not on the tiles it's on, and you're teleporting towards it because you're running, it's just, there's a lot of working out the maths and logic and checking, did these cross paths? And it's ultimately, you're never going to get it 100% perfect. It's like, because is it like checking for like a tile ahead because it's going to, because it's moving so fast? You've got to kind of get the idea of momentum, because it was just a lot of challenge. We've got it working. I think the most important thing was just it feels fair. Do you know what I mean? Like if the player gets hit and they're like, that's terrible, like I clearly wasn't on that square, I shouldn't be hit, then that's not okay. So
I remember Mod Curse was just like, this is too difficult, I can't even do this, and just like send it back to you.
Yeah, I mean, well, the entirety of floor 5 has been deemed too difficult until we get animations in that properly tell what the traps are going to do, because there's next to no visual tell, or there wasn't, at least until recently, for some of the traps, which made it really hard for the player to try and actually think their way around that. So
Ash, in your entirety of working as a developer, what was one of the most challenging things that you had to code, and how did you overcome that?
The player-owned house room rearrangement menu that moves room from place to place without you having to take out all the furniture and rebuild it. That is probably the hardest thing I've ever had to do. Not because the geometry is hard, but because a room can be connected to other rooms, and the staircases, if they're linked, need to do something about that. So I've got the situation where you're maybe putting a room in a place where its staircase may or may not line up with the staircase of the room below it, at which point, if it's a straight staircase rather than a spiral one, I've got to do something about the staircase to make it line up. Or if it's a spiral one, it's allowed to line up. But spiral ones can go over 2 connections because you can have a spiral staircase spanning all 3 levels of your house. And to solve that, frankly, I just spent a whole weekend day when the office was quiet, trying very, very hard, and eventually got something that seemed to work, and it passed QA as well. There wasn't a clever trick to it. It was just taking into account all the things I could think of and trying. and being willing to throw the thing away and start to go from scratch when I got into a pickle and couldn't carry on for what I'd got. Damn well worth it though, because that's one of the proudest things I've done to Old School, that room rearrangement menu. Even if it's not that often seen, whenever you want to, change your house a bit, or we add a new type of room and you want to build it in a nicer place, that's really saving you quite a lot of money.
It is
It
really
is.
convenient.
I was going to say I used it quite a lot when I was trying to like make it the perfect house for me.
I think it's up there in like one of the best qual updates the game has seen. So yeah,
I'd agree with that.
I only did it as a kind of feature creep because we were going to RuneFest and pitching the achievement gallery and the superior garden. And I said in the meeting where we were talking about it, people are going to want to rearrange their houses around that. How about we make a menu for this? And that turned out to be kind of bigger than the rest of the project put together, but totally worth it.
there is such a thing as good feature creep sometimes.
Well, we scheduled it in because we was talking about this when we were planning the RuneFest pitch, never mind planning the actual dev work. So we knew we were going to take it on when we got to RuneFest, and we knew roughly how big it would be. It's not like deciding to do it at the last minute as a surprise to players. Although one hell of a surprise if we'd done that.
Speaking of RuneFest, at the last RuneFest, we announced that we will hope to bring clans and group Ironman to Old School. How are those projects coming along? And do we know, or do the players, or can the players know who might be working on those types of features?
For the moment, that's still with the engine team. And they've certainly made progress. I mean, we heard that Mod Boko, for example, had created the first clan. Of course, there was a bit of ambiguity about what that meant. For some players, that meant that, well, if you can create a clan, launch it, we can all create a clan. It turns out what he meant was a bit more like he had created a database and put some data in it, which is a very long way from having something that could go in the game to let the RuneScript language create more clans and respond to players using a menu we'd have to create a clan for them. But it's like laying foundations. It doesn't mean you can move into the house straight away, but it's a darn good thing to have done because you're going to need it somewhere along the line. And unfortunately, of course, he's had to pause some of that because, as I think we mentioned before on a stream, the engine teams had to make a few changes to our testing system so that we can actually do development work from outside Lincoln office. That was not something we'd scheduled because we didn't see the pandemic coming when we went to RuneFest last year. And yeah, that's having knock-on effects. Good thing is that mostly people can do what they need to do from wherever they are now. But there's still aspects of it that need more attention. Like, I think testing on mobile devices has been one of the remaining challenges, given that all of those were pretty much locked down to the Wi-Fi network in one building, and quite a lot of other infrastructure is based around that. Tech staff having to deal with that didn't have a choice about doing it properly, because otherwise we can't test the darn game on that platform. Whatever it did to the rest of the projects they'd have liked to work on instead. So I still think clans is some months away. Sweden's done a lot of gathering of players' requests regarding what they want in it. In fact, he listed quite a lot on that RuneFest, and I know for a fact people have sent in more since. He's very excited about it, of course, because he was in clans and running clans back in the day. So he's going to do everything he can to help us make the features that you want, whatever the systems are going to support, though, because there will ultimately be things that people would like that we will not be able to deliver. I hate having to say that, but can't really say otherwise.
Yeah.
With regards to like the testing on mobile devices, it used to be like, especially if I'm working from home, everyone in the office would be able to share the different devices around and just hand it to someone. Now it's like everyone needs one of those devices to test on, and then you have to rearrange with someone who has the other device to make sure it works, or try to go and like get another device that would work to test on it. It is quite difficult.
It was a real surprise to testers in the first week we were working from home, because we basically got the call to ship everything home by email on Saturday or Sunday for effect first thing Monday. And that meant that who'd physically got a mobile device that would connect to Jagged's test servers was pot luck. And Mod Christie, for example, hadn't got one. Mod Curse, I think, did. So, but he didn't have he only had an Android. I think someone else had an iOS one. It's not been that long, but we've got a lot of that stuff sorted now in terms of who's physically got items, which is good because there's been more lockdown restrictions since then, and we'd probably not be able to go out so freely to pass things around like that.
Yeah, definitely. Another thing that we've talked about in past live streams was another league, and we did mention it quite. We discussed maybe a PvP one here, but do we have any updates on leagues that we can share? Like, do we know who would be working on it? And also, what learnings can you take from the last league and apply it to maybe a future?
Yeah, so leagues, we know what we want to do for the next league. We're not in a place to share exactly what that is, but the people who'll be working on that will be the project team, Flippy, myself, and Mod Ed, all working on that. There are lots of learnings we want to take from the last league. Some of the relic choices were really good, some weren't. Some people felt like there weren't enough relics, so we'd like to maybe increase the length of time you would play to achieve some of the later ones, or add another few extra tiers, that sort of thing. There are things we'd like to do to help. There's lots of things we'd like to do, and some of them are very lower priority, but like finding, sorting tasks and getting things like that. There's things we'd like to do to help increase drop rates. That was a popular one because people, like, rightly pointed out that if you've only got like a month or two to get all the items, some of those grinds in the game take months anyway, right? Or weeks. Well, usually a week or so, but if you're getting unlucky, it could take months. And if you need to get all these items to do content you want to do in a league, it just isn't really feasible to get it. So even increasing the drop rates by like 3, 4, or 5 times, whatever that ends up being, will make such a big difference on the average time it takes to get those drops, as well as reducing the swinginess of going dry on them. So we'd like to do that. But also, like, I kind of hope players will get excited for what the next league is going to be. It will be different to Twisted League, and have a lot more strategy and depth to it, hopefully. So
yeah, I think like the 3 core points is like more relics, extended late game, and then better and fairer point rewards, or like points from tasks, and less RNG overall. And we've also been looking at having more of a linear progression that is not necessarily tied to the relics that you pick, but something that can help you get increased XP rates and drop rates over time. So that's kind of where we are now, but we had a meeting today discussing the scope of the project and what we could realistically do in the time frame and so on. So it's not really, many things are not set in stone yet, but we want to mainly address everything we got feedback on last time. So we hope that players can come back to a similar experience but improved, with a bunch of a new rule set and fresh relics and so on. So
yeah,
I remember, like, probably 2 weeks into the first league, you, Flippy, were just like, you made a document and just like, this is everything that we need to fix because this is like probably not good. And it's just like, it just started becoming like a living document. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's just became this like big document at the end of it of just all the things that you just didn't like. And you're like, this is going to change next time.
Both me and Husky identified a lot of things throughout the league, which we, even like mid-production, we were like, God, we really want to fix this. But we also have a deadline which we need to meet. So a lot of it just carried over to this league, and we're not even going to be able to have the time to fix all of the things. So some things might be the third league, if that's a thing. But yeah, I'm glad we can address some of it, at least.
yeah,
For that
sure.
matter, during the league, I know there were times where many of you did want to change things, but felt it might be unfair to do so halfway through a competition. Like if you suddenly drastically affected the rate at which people get a certain item.
Yeah.
And with better visibility of that kind of thing up front now, hopefully we won't be in that situation so often. though I expect there will be something, because you get obscure needs for items.
Yeah, there was a couple of things we felt we definitely changed because we felt like we had to. I know the most controversial one was the lockpick on the scavengers and raids, because a lot of people spent their time and identified they needed to get that for artifacts, and that was just kind of something that slipped. It was my mind personally. It was my mess up. I didn't realize you needed a lockpick to do artifacts, and that locked out the diary. I didn't even realize there was a way to get a lockpick on Current, and we talked about it. And we're like, locking out artifacts is probably fine, but locking out the entire diary, maybe not. And eventually, we settled on that decision. Was it the right one? Maybe, maybe not. But I mean, as you guys have said, there were things even like a couple days in that we just wanted to change. We looked at you can look at an entire spreadsheet of tasks and think you've got them all balanced, and you're scrolling through the list of hundreds of tasks, but there are some that just slip through the cracks as just being either too good or too weak. The gem stall was too good, and a lot of the PVM drops were just too weak, you know? And I even said to the guys, look, I know nobody has done like these Hydra tasks yet because they can't have 95 Slayer 2 days in. Should we change them? But ultimately, people had made their strategies, right? There are people who'd already looked at the task list and said, hey, skilling is the way to go. PVM sucks. I'm picking my first 2 relics based on that, you know? They identified that quickly, and that would have felt really bad to punish them.
Yeah, it's always awkward in a very, very competitive environment like that, because you almost have to live with the fact that some things are over or under-tuned, and just go by the logic that everyone shares the same environment and go under the same criteria. So everyone has equal chances in a way. But of course, it sucks when you see something mid-league that you would like to change, and then you realize that you can't, because that would just give some people a huge advantage depending on which relic they picked, or which route they took.
It was super hard to identify blockers as well, like things that you just didn't think of at first. I think it was like the day before release when we were playtesting leagues, and West took my plow, and I was like, this isn't fair. He took my plow. And then I was like, you do realize there's only 2 plows per patch. We need to like up this ASAP. So
it was 1 originally.
Oh, it was 1.
Was it 1 originally?
It was.
I think when
Zaya
launched, there were a lot more fields, and then they weren't needed anymore.
Yeah, Mod West took a lot of them out with the Sidious.
Yeah.
Well, Husky did a lovely job re-implementing plows so that they take up less space in practice, I think, and also be able to have more of them.
Yeah, we did identify. I think we increased it by 4 times the amount of plows, like 2 days before the update launched, because we realized it, and it still wasn't enough. Sandworms, I think, were fixed on the day of release. There were a lot of talks about shop restocking and stuff that were just like, what do you play as an advantage because someone was smart versus, being fair for everyone? So, yeah.
So, in the March Gazette, we mentioned taking Soul Wars from RuneScape. Are there any plans to take other content from RuneScape? And if there isn't, what would you like to see from RuneScape added to Old School if you could?
Sort of backwards answer to this one, but one of the things we've taken from the other RuneScape lately is Mod Melee. And the thing about her is that she co-wrote songs, Stealing Creation. So that springs to mind.
I think I would love Stealing Creation. I used to play it all the time.
I think it just kind of comes down to the players as well. I mean, we hear a lot of people talk about when was RuneScape good, right? Was it 2007 where the game was taken? Was 2008? Was 2010? And some of those updates are very popular, and it just kind of depends what the players want. And the thing is that anything we do take would absolutely need to be reworked for I don't say the economy, but like it's more like the economy of the game itself, like the whole environment, the rules that we now have with content that they didn't have back then. So
a lot of the quests for Stealing Creation over the years have said, by the way, don't worry about those sacred tools. And I think that's probably good advice, because there's a lot of, firstly, they didn't work too well when launched, if anyone remembers. I think the pickaxe worked in quite well, but the hatchet only worked on one kind of tree for its benefit, and wasn't recognised as a hatchet for most of the rest of the game. And the needle didn't do jack. Anywho, there's been a lot of players say they aren't so sure about wanting that kind of thing again, but they would like the gameplay and that kind of fun, which is fair. Of course, you put out a mini game with no rewards, a lot of people will expect it to be dead content. So I expect we'd have to think of something. On the other hand, it can be something that fits Old School as it is now.
One of the benefits as well of taking updates from the other game and reworking them is that we get to see kind of, in hindsight, what would the developers have changed back then, right? How did it actually play out? And make any changes appropriately. You know, did something end up being really strong? Was there like a huge bug that they found like weeks later that we can instead fix before it happens? You know, there's lots of benefits to doing that. But again, it just comes down to what the players want.
I mean, even if you think about Stealing Creation also had summoning in it. So it's one of those things, do you remove summoning from Stealing Creation, or do you implement Stealing Creation with a summoning feature as well?
Yeah, we have a similar, but
lean towards removing it.
Personally, yes.
yeah, that's like what we face with Soul Wars as well, but on a much smaller scale. Because there we also have the is it the experience that you can put in summoning? Can't remember from the rewards either way.
I think it was.
Yeah. But yeah,
I think it had like summoning charms as well or something, didn't it?
Yeah, it had charms, and it had pets as well. It's very controversial, but it is one of those things.
Pets that worked on that infrastructure will be a very different thing if converted to the Old School code base.
Yep.
In regards to, so we talked about Soul Wars, we talked about the past stuff in March Gazette, we talked about the blog. What is coming tomorrow in terms of what can the players expect for tomorrow's game update? Is there something we want to talk to them about? Tell them, give them a sneak preview.
Easter.
Yeah, Mod Oasis has been hard at work on that. I think it's his third holiday event, and it's been he's been with us now for, I think it's 6 or 7 months now. And the one thing that I've been excited about is to see how he's pushed the boat with what he can do with holiday events as his skills as a developer have got better, and he's got a lot more comfortable with the code base. So that's been a lot of fun to see, and I hope the community go hopping mad for the update.
Oh no.
I think he has also mentioned an ambition to not write the next holiday event.
Yeah, I don't blame him.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of content that one can be asked to do, and holiday events will very often go to the newest member of the team. Reason being, they're great newbie projects. You get to show you can be creative, and we are vetting that for newbies. You get to write something that's usually linear, so it's not like a huge branching piece of code that ties into everything. It's probably relatively simple, and you have a heck of a lot of fun too. So newbies often get those, but he's had 3 of them now, and I think come Halloween, if we haven't got another developer before that, we might find somebody else rather than dropping yet another one on him.
I think I'm due one. I ended up getting Forthos instead of a holiday event because Mod Tide had taken the holiday event just before we both got hired at the same time. So I don't know. Maybe if depending where the projects lie, I could end up taking Halloween or Christmas.
You've got some big shoes to fill from Mod Flippy implementing the bed sheet that you could use anywhere.
To be fair, that was just, I got so many free points from just picking a reward that the community had been whining about for so long. And that was like a big part of the update itself. So maybe if we can just dig deep enough, we can find another reward like that.
I had an idea for a Christmas event, but it was deemed a little bit too big for the last Christmas. I would dearly love to have a go at doing it one day. The premise, right, is that Santa's dead, and you take it from there with a necromancer.
It does sound like a lot of work.
It was, but I think the players would have certainly remembered it. And if you go back to like 2015, the Deck the Halls with Tears and Sorrow event that I think Matt directed, but obviously didn't implement himself. That one was quite a chunky event, but it was very well played and quite well received too. So if we've got the dev resources for it, it might be fun to do a freakish one.
I do often see players requesting the old ice skating one. From
What Maylee wrote that.
I mean, maybe she'd be up for doing a Christmas event.
What if we tie events together where you end up doing like a part 1 for Halloween and something happens and you need to wait for Christmas for part 2?
Oh, jeez. That would hurt.
I mean, if Santa's dead in
Whoa.
ashes, I mean, in
That could
in
actually
that
be the last
design.
Christmas event ever. But
Well, what if Halloween is Santa's died and you end up going to Necromancer to get him back, but then when it gets to Christmas, you realize that stuff's gone really wrong because something went wrong when he came back. And
Not like this, guys.
very Pet Cemetery. For what it's worth, the ideas were a little messed up for Santa being dead, involving you having to distract the grieving relatives so as to be able to get a sample of blood and use shears on corpse to get a sample of beard so that you could get what the necromancer needed to try and restore Santa. It's possible we'll never get to do that. It might just be deemed too messed up, quite apart from the dev time involved. But I would have liked to have a go.
This is what happens when you have Jmods just like brain dump loads of things, and then you just get some bizarre thing that comes out of it at the end.
No, this
Also,
is what
I should be a
happens
slight
when you
thief when I
stay
wrote
at
that
home
design.
for weeks.
one of us is going to go crazy and just write a holiday event in their spare time.
And no one will notice it's any different from what we normally give.
So one last question before we head off. RuneScape just released the new skill, Archaeology. Does Old School have any plans to maybe give a skill to the players?
Did the person
We
who
put a news post out today.
did the person who asked the question not read the news post?
This was before the news post.
Oh, so they
But-
mean a second new skill.
Yeah, second new skill. But let's say we don't go with pet ranching. Maybe people don't like it. If you could put a skill into the game, what would it be? Maybe it is pet ranching.
I don't know what skill I put in the game, but I was smiling reading that whole dev blog, and I was like, I love Pokemon. Like could we do something like this and get away with it? I don't know. I don't know.
What it's worth, with us, openly talking about Soul Wars and speculating about what other things we could get out of the kind of partial archive we've got from 2012-ish. Well, that thing does have summoning and dungeoneering in it. That said, perhaps the conversion needed to get the models back into Old School and then recreate the animations, as I understand it, that really is quite a big process. Correct me if I'm wrong, Husky. I think you've worked with Dry on some of this.
Yeah.
If we ever release something like summoning, I would like to rework a lot of like the core design
Yes.
of the whole thing. Not like mechanically the code behind it, but rather like a lot of familiars tended to be completely irrelevant and so on. And it wasn't.
You really could rework some of the code behind it. We've
That
had a
too,
few learning
probably.
experiences since 2007 when it was being written.
Yeah.
I mean, personally for me, I wouldn't mind seeing like a mashup of sailing with dungeoneering, where you kind of like build these ships to take you to uncharted islands and you plunder dungeons or raid dungeons from kind of like an exploration style skill. I saw a few players like suggest that in the past, and I thought it would be quite interesting to kind of take two ideas and then mash them up into one.
I was
Yeah.
quite excited about the possibility of working on sailing back in the day. Obviously, didn't pass a poll, and if I'm going to have a project that size, I'd like it to be one that players are genuinely keen on.
Yeah.
But I would have had a lot of fun on that, I think.
So we're pretty much like at time. Does anyone have any like parting words for our players? Any like goodbye? I mean, we're going to see them next week, but it's not
Are
like
you
a.
sure?
Wow. I don't know. Was that a bit morbid of you?
I
Acorn?
mean, we're talking
Are we going to
about
see
like
them next week?
we're talking about killing off Santa. It can't be any more morbid than that, can it?
Well, there is a pandemic going on. But regarding that, just hope you guys are all coping okay with what's going on, and that you and your families are able to be somewhere safe during it, and that it doesn't mess your lives around too badly as well. All the very best.
Yeah. I just hope everyone stays safe. Remember to consider the safety of yourself and others. And I'm just glad that we get to be that that sort of venue that people are using for their enjoyment to get through this difficult time. I think we're in a fortunate position for that, and just hope everyone continues to make the best out of the situation, I suppose, because
we might be isolated, but we're isolated together.
Yeah, it's changed a lot of people's lives in ways they didn't expect. So,
I mean, if you need someone to talk to, feel free to message me. I try to like go into game, say hi. Sometimes you need someone to talk to, and I tend to find myself like sitting in silence. So it's good to have someone there that has an opening ear. So, of course, feel free. We're here for you in this time. I think that's it. So we'll see you next time, everyone.
I want to see a doggo to cheer them up.
Yes.
Are you going to lift your dog up? Okay. There you go.
This is the real Mod Husky. I am just the puppet.
Oh.
There are some advantages to working from home.
All right. Bye, everyone.
All right. Thank you, guys.